Hello and welcome to Items On, the podcast where you get to follow your favorite Melee players and personalities. My name is Ethiopium, and today our special guest is Free Palestine. How you doing today, homie?
I'm doing all right. Just got my stuff set up this morning and, ready to talk.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to be asking you some questions today. Usually how we start off is I ask you how you found your way into the Melee scene and what you were doing sort of before that.
So I guess I got into the Melee scene as a Smash 4 player. So Smash 4 came out, I think, a sophomore or junior year of high school, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And, me and my high school friends really got into it. I didn't even have a Wii U. I played on a 2DS, the old little doorstops. And there was a tournament like less than 10 minutes from our house. And so I would go, but I'd be embarrassed to play on the 2DS. So I'd bring my GameCube controller and play at tournaments on that on the GameCube controller, and then go home and practice For Glory, playing only Diddy Kong and Little Mac. And I enjoyed like competing. I would get, somewhere in top 8, sometimes like top 3, top 4. And the entire time they had PM at that tournament, and it looked like more fun. And to be honest, like that was the only time that PM was like a tournament, like at least like it was the first one that I saw that looked like they were having more fun than I was having.
Mm-hmm.
And then, in comparison, at least Melee was way easier to get into. So I was like, well, I'll just play that instead. So even though like I was, initially I went there for, it kind of got me into the Smash competing vibes, and it looked like, the PM guys were kind of having more fun. And I enjoyed Smash 4. I was a pre-patch Diddy Kong main. And so like, if anyone knows what that means, you'll know what that means. And like nobody else in my city really was. So it was kind of free, to be honest. Like, even though I didn't know what I was doing, switching controllers. And then, I just started playing Netplay. I went to like, I think one tournament late 2015 and then didn't go to another one until like April 2016. And that's when I kind of actually entered what is my scene, what it's called OSU Melee, which represents Central Ohio, Columbus, founded in and around the Ohio State University. So 2016 is when I really started competing. And that entire stretch, I was just on Netplay. A lot of people in the Midwest know me as Millhouse, my old tag. People call me Millie. I used to play online a ton, and that's like where I kind of got better at the game. And then I started entering in 2016, and ever since then I've been pretty active competitor, both like in the Midwest we'll just get into a car at 7:30 a.m., drive 3 hours to somewhere random in Pennsylvania or Indiana, play until 11 p.m., 10 p.m., however long you have to play, and if you've got me or Dreffin in your carpool, you get kind of upset. You're like, oh my God, these guys are fourth or something, you're gonna be here all day. Bracket reset, it's 11:30 and you got like a 3-hour car ride. So that's where I kind of cut my teeth in terms of being like a competitor, and just playing ever since then.
That's awesome. I mean, did you grow up playing video games, or were you doing like sports, or what was your like childhood like growing up in terms of like video games? Because I know some people are like super gamers growing up and into Nintendo, and that's how they found it, and others aren't.
I had like a GameCube when I was, younger, and I had an older brother 2 years older than me that we would play Melee all the time. And we used to think that Falco was the best character in the game because he moved with his F smash and it was stronger than Fox's. So for those two reasons, we had determined Falco number 1, Fox probably number 2, somewhere like that. But we had played, Nintendo games, and then, console games like, 360, played, things like Gears of War and Call of Duty. And then, I only really got into competitive gaming kind of in high school and around that time, because, I'd always played so many different games, but to kind of be pushed was more fun. And I remember at that time, in that first, year or whatever you're competing, you're not going to do that well or make money, especially in Melee, right? And my brother, who had played video games all my life, he went to like a FIFA tournament out on campus, and they had like a $300 pot bonus for some reason, and he won it, and he was just giving me, shit. He was like, oh, you've played this game for so long, you're practicing all the time. I go one time to this FIFA tournament, make more money. But he took me out to dinner afterwards, so
so it's a win-win. It stays in the family at least. I want to talk. Go ahead. Sorry.
So that's kind of like how I started, and then in college is when I played most of my Melee, or really grinded a lot. Going to Smash Fest. OC Melee is a very good scene here. So it's it's great to just keep playing.
Yeah, I mean, I want to ask you about the OSU scene. You talk about joining it around 2016.
Mhm.
Did you go to college there at OSU, or were you just joining the scene and the stuff around it?
Yeah, so I went to Ohio State University from 2016 to 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And so I graduated. I did geography.
Mm,
Um, so I, make maps and stuff. You see, I have some maps back
that's
here.
awesome. Yeah.
There's many more on the other side that you can't see, and many, many more other places. Um, but yeah, and the OSU melee scene is was used to be founded because it was in and around the campus, and it still generally is in that area. But um, most of the people, I would say, not really go to OSU, especially now. People are older and graduated, but we still always have like young people in there. And I always think that like OSU as a not, I guess, like if you look at all of the players of all time as a crew battle, like top 7, top 5, like alumni of that school, it's
Mhm.
pretty strong. And I think we only get beaten by those, California schools that are, crazy, and some of those Florida ones too.
Yeah, like
So
UCI or something like that.
no, they're just unfair. It's just not even a
Yeah.
competition. Yeah. And you go to alumni, it's just like, no, dude, you can't have like 6 top 20 players. You have to cut like 3 of them from your top 5. That's not okay. But yeah. So yeah, I think it's like very good for that reason. And I stay going to locals
Hell yeah.
for
I mean,
for that reason too.
yeah, it's pretty stacked up there in OSU. It's funny because that's like something that's very similar to what a lot of players said in terms of how they grew up in the scene. A lot of times it relates to the college scene around them. And I want you to hopefully maybe paint a picture and describe to us what that scene was like when you joined and how it helped you develop not only as a Melee player, but as a person outside of Melee.
So a big one was we used to have, and probably a lot of people have a similar place in their scenes. It's called a smash house, where
Mhm.
generally people who are in college or right out of college, living near the college area. And the house that we used to go to was just like, it was massive, right? Like one of those places that you really like I never really saw every room, or like I didn't even know the scope of how big that place was. But there were just so many people, and we would host at some point tournaments there. And the first time I ever like really understood that kind of hospitality, I guess, is like we're doing these like massive tournaments in this person's house or these people's house, and they're just kind of like letting whoever in to come be in their space for a couple hours at a time. And that's like, it builds a lot of camaraderie between, people competing and then people that just go there the next day to hang out and play.
Mhm.
And so, one of the 6 people who would play Melee would just message me and I'd come over, and 2 of the other people would already be playing, and there'd be just like a fest going on. And so like, being able to kind of be in a comfortable position like that to kind of drop all of your guard and just play the game and, learn and just hang out. I think it builds good Melee too, versus, not knowing the person you're playing against, online or something like that. So for me, from being like an online competitor, especially in early 2016 to when I, got to college and started being comfortable to coming to these types of places, it was like kind of different for me, and it helped me, I think, learn, both Melee and then in alternative way, we would host tournaments there. And then one time we used to host our tournaments at this pizza place.
Mm.
And right before our Arcadian, I think 1 or 2 days before, they just canceled on us like entirely. They had booked some pop punk band instead, and they just booked them over us. And then like 40 hours before the event started, they were like, hey guys, like this just not, you're not going to be able to run this thing here. And so we as a community, as OSU Melee, we split all of the pools into like 8 different houses,
Wow.
all of the pools of the thing. And then we all met up at Smash House for the top, 32 or top 16 as it were. And there were just, way too many people at that house, and the VODs are still up. It's very fun. We did a lot of money matches and things like that. So like, being able to kind of, it was, hectic, of course, at the moment, your venue gets canceled 40 hours before. It's like the worst thing possible. But, it worked out. It's like, okay, who can host, 4 people, who can host 8 people at their place, bring some setups. And so we just coordinated everything, and it worked out, and it was a great time. So, that type of thing is, kind of what it's hard to like bring all of that together into one idea.
Mhm.
But that's kind of why, I like being here. And, it's the people that make that happen and feel like that's, something that I want to be a part of.
And who are some of the people specifically to you that help you transition from like more of that online type of player to, going to the smash houses and being ingratiated in that scene?
one of my he doesn't play very much nowadays, but one of my old friends, Evan, his tag was loose or get loose, Falcon and a Marth main later. But I remember because this is before I was, and you can kind of still see it in my play. I'm not a very high tech skill player. Like I'm not the fastest and it shows that I play the other characters and stuff. So it would make sense that my tech is not exactly that, but it was way worse back in the day. I couldn't wave dash out of shield because I was just using one trigger and I couldn't stop. I know some people like stop right before and then they like press Y and then they press it in. That's impossible. And so like I couldn't shield drop. I couldn't do any of this. And he was like, this is back when my tag was Millhouse. He was like, look, Millhouse, just pick up Sheik and learn to shield drop and stop worrying about any of this. And if you know me as a player, you probably know me as a Sheik main. And this is before I ever played Sheik, right? This is literally before people know me as a Sheik player. But the first time I got power ranked in OSU, I was a Fox and DK player. And then I picked up Marth and then I picked up Sheik and then I started swapping them back in various amounts. So like Evan really helped me back then to like, it was like, you're getting better with one character, but then, it's like, why switch? But then, someone gave me the confidence to just take that jump. And it definitely worked for me. Especially, at that time, I got way better, and Sheik is not a very high tech skill character, of course. So like in comparison to Fox. So, but now, I'm back to playing Fox and stuff. So I don't know.
Yeah, I want to ask you a little bit of that because I was doing a little research and it was like, wow, this guy has done a lot of different characters.
Well, I want to know something first.
Okay,
because so you've done your research. Can I understand from your perspective? What do you think I do right now? Like I show up to a tournament, I'm here to try. What do you think is my toolkit?
Your toolkit? Well,
yeah.
I mean, I've seen the Fox now doing work. I know you use both controllers too. I'm going to ask you on that.
Okay.
I mean,
so yeah,
I know you
stopped doing that.
Oh, you stopped that?
I've stopped that. Yeah. So I still have my box here, the dripped out box.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
those buttons are so sick. It looks so clean.
Thank you. So I don't know if you know Thunders, the Japanese legendary
the legend.
Player.
Yeah.
He lived in Westchester, Ohio for a span of 2 years. And, he hadn't played Melee for like a decade or like something like that. He just like not touch the scene at all, not go to anything. But he was here and, what are you going to do as a Japanese guy in Westchester, Ohio? I'm sure there's not that much. So he picked up Melee again, right?
Yeah.
So this guy starts coming to our locals and he's very good with engineering. And so he did this, which is this.
I've seen that on Twitter.
This metal gate. And so as the controller is clean, I have not, I've used it for like 6 years. And so as you imagine, the gates were so bad that I just didn't want to play on it that much. And so like when I played Fox on box, that controller, I was like, I don't want to play Fox on that controller at all. It just didn't feel good. And so, I had a stint of maybe 7 months where what I would do, maybe 7 months from around like Smash Camp to Kilroy, whatever that timeline is. I would play Sheik and Marth on the controller. And then if I had to play Fox for often Puff, sometimes Foxes, mainly Sheik, that's like my favorite matchup as Fox. I would pull out my box and plug in and just play Fox. and so that's what I was doing for a while. But then I got my controller fixed from Thunders at Kilroy. And, that's not too far from now, 3 or 4 months or something. But I just started playing Fox like in friendlies there. And I was like, it just feels right. And I felt like I was playing a bit more dynamically, which is my main goal in Melee as a whole, doing more things that were kind of smoother or harder to do on box. I'm not going to like walk, jump, turn around, do an up tilt, or do an up air land up tilt. I'm just not going to do that on box. And so, little things like that. And I was just PC dropping all the time. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to play on this. And then, maybe 3 weeks goes by and I play at Big House. And I'm like, I don't even bring my box into the venue. I'm like, because it's heavy as hell. So like, honestly, like, carrying that around all day, I was like, screw it. I'll just bring my controller and deal with it.
Yeah. It's a workout.
So, and so in doubles, I play some controller Fox and it goes okay. And then we're playing Panda Cruddo in like 4th place match or 5th. I don't remember. It was up there, but Panda Cruddo, very good. And we're down, I think 2-1. And it's supposed to be a best of 3, by the way. We gentlemen to a best of 5. So shouts out to the fact that we were down 2-1. We should have lost. And I pull out my controller and pick Fox, right? And we bring it back and we beat them. And I think the next day, Credo comes up to me. He was like, yeah, I was like tilted. I was like, you've been playing box Fox for like however many months, and you just pull out the controller one and it's like better. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't know. And then the next day I played Moff in who's a very good Ice Climbers player. And shout outs out to Fluid, the Ices. He was warming me up, and I was just playing Fox. And I've never in my life played Fox Ices in bracket, like ever, because the Foxes in my region, Boyd and Papa, are just like really, really good versus Fox, and it's just trolling to go Fox against them. And so, and I won 2 games with Fox, and I was like, okay, it's just fine. I'll just, it gave me the confidence to just at least put the box down, because I was like, well, clearly I can do it. It's better than my box Fox would have done probably with like 3 weeks of practice. So I'm just back on controller. But then since then, I've picked up Falcon again. Not again, but picked up Falcon. So I've won the last 3 locals with Falcon.
Nice.
And I'm going to keep playing Falcon until I get it beat out of me. So that's a challenge to everyone in Columbus. So please come and stop me. Captain Kebab needs to stop.
Captain Kebab, that's a legendary tag. Oh my God. Yo, that's fire. That's fire. I want to ask you, like, like you said, Fox, DK, Mars, Sheik, you got the Falcon now, box, controller, you know what I mean? Like, is it like, does it interest you to take on that new challenge, feeling something different? Or is it like you had a specific reason for each of these changes?
So it's a mix of both. So I think especially earlier when I was switching, I had a very specific reason, and it was way clearer and easier for me to define. But as I went on, the reasons, like if any of the reasons, right, from an external perspective, it's like, oh, this guy's trolling, right? It's like, you have to be like, what do you mean? You're just like halfway through like the last 8 games, you just pull out a new controller and plug it in for the 9th game in a row. Like, it's like, what are you doing? Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, that has to go through people's minds. And for me, it's true. It's not so much the challenge as it is like, when I have to start some new adventure in Melee, whether it's switching to box, and I was talking to my friend Charlie about this the other day, but it's like, once you have to stop and think about what you're doing, because you break the cycle of, I've done, I'm a Fox player. I've done so many run-in nairs in my life that like 1/1,000,000th in one doesn't feel like anything. But when you're on a new controller, when you go for that nair and it's hard to go for, you think about it. You're like, well, why am I doing this one? Why am I doing this one here?
Yeah.
Why am I doing that one? If it's all hard, it's all difficult, you can at least stop. It forces you to break your thinking, stop, and be like, okay, yeah, like I can't just turn around and back air this guy. But should I turn around and back air this guy? And, I think as long as I stop and think, I'm going to get better at the game. So like what happens for me is like, even if my tech is bad on, any, like I said, I'm not like a tech based player, and it shows the worst with my Marth for sure. But I'm gonna remember how to play Sheik. Like, you give me like 10 minutes of warm up with Sheik, I'm gonna be fine, right? For whatever matchup. So as long as like, even this adventure with Falcon or something, if I learn how to deal with certain characters' options as Falcon, that might help my Sheik, it might help my Marth. I don't know yet, and I don't know how. But like learning and having a larger depth of understanding of the game, I think for me, at least in the last like 3 years, that's what's helped me. And it kind of required me to stop sort of caring, because a lot of these, I was kind of trolling a lot of the way, and I didn't expect to do okay with these decisions, to be honest with everyone. That's why I tell people don't do it. People are like, oh, I want to do that. I was like, why? Like, don't like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I guess do as I say, don't do as I do. People are like, oh yeah, I want to play like Sheik on controller and Fox on box. I'm like, don't, like, no, it's not smart. Yeah. So I don't know. It's weird, but it works for me sometimes. And, it's fun. And so as long as I'm having fun, and if I can prioritize that, that's what keeps me going. So like, the Sheik Ditto is not fun. So I'll play Fox Sheik, and, I'd rather lose Fox Sheik than have an unfun matchup. And, some people, for a lot of people, it's very hard to say or admit that, or it's maybe easy to say it, but not, truly believe it. But when you're down, 1-1 and you're still playing Fox instead of Sheik, that's when it shows, right? And I'm down to run that and lose it as Fox. So I don't know. I'll just keep doing that.
You said something interesting to me. You said, if I take the time to stop and think, then I will become like a better player overall, even if it's with like a different character or a different controller layout. How do you find the balance? This is something that I personally struggle with, so I'm interested to hear your thoughts. How do you find the balance between taking that time in game to stop and think about your decisions, and also still keeping the pace up in, such a taxing game like Melee? I mean, are you thinking
Well,
about it more
yeah.
outside the game and then trying to implement, or are you still like thinking about it critically inside the game?
Well, I try to think about it critically inside the game during every friendlies or rank set possible.
Hmm.
And at these, late night Smash Fest, at the end of the night, I'm not exactly paying attention that
Yeah.
much. But for the most part, like even in friendlies, doubles, whatever, I'm still thinking and at least trying to like understand why I'm doing something, at least in some moment. But in tournament, it's completely different. But
Mm.
if you break down the amount of tournament I've played versus the amount of every other Melee game I've played, I try to put in all of that practice and thinking during those friendly games, because all of this being said, I don't solo practice at all, like
Really?
almost ever. It's probably less than 1%, if not less than that, of my total time in Melee. And that's since I started
Hmm.
playing the game, to be honest. I just don't enjoy it that much. So I will go into I keep playing ranked, I keep playing people. As long as I'm thinking and trying, I think I'm gonna get better and learn. And so like I'll do that as long as it's not tournament. And there's time for even in tournament, of course, to break habits and learn people's habits. But I
Hmm.
think when you put in that time to think about the game, okay, in the first 40 seconds, does this guy have any habits? Have you got a read on this guy? And even if it's friendlies against some person at your local that like you might not have played before, it's like, okay, 40 seconds into your warm-up match, do you know anything about how this guy plays? Can you like write down 3 things about it? You might be wrong, but like put those down in your head and see if you're right or wrong. And that's kind of what I try to do like all the time. And it is a bit taxing to do that all the time, but
Hmm.
I'm it it makes it harder for me in bracket because I'm also distracted. But but when I do that in out of bracket, I think it helps me, and that's how I kind of build my base of understanding.
So when you're in tournament, then are you sort of just relying on what putting the hay in the barn in terms of practice in ranked, practice in these
Mm.
Smash Fests, and then just sort of like, all right, mind off. I believe, like, I'm gonna look at these guys' habits. I'm gonna see what
Yeah.
he's putting out there, and then I'm just gonna trust myself to execute my ideas.
So I'd like to do that,
Hmm.
but I'm a very unfocused person. So I'm the type of person where if I'm playing like on stage in a regional and someone says something funny in the crowd, I could tell you what he said after the set. Like I
Mm.
am, and it's really bad, as a competitor. But I'd be really good at tech. That's why I'm maybe not good at tech chasing. My focus is probably my worst aspect,
Mm.
and my edge guarding, of course, that's just abysmal. But
It's
yeah,
hard.
no, like I'd like to think that. No, I'm an extremely distracted person at tournaments and like in just in general, which I think is why I'm just in the game. I would constantly think about the game, but sometimes at tournaments when there's so many other factors, it's really distracting. I'm thinking of things that aren't beneficial. But when I can at least try to pick apart people's game plan, or like with certain characters, I try to classify them, especially Fox players, right?
Mhm.
Because Fox players, I think, like they get kind of painted with one brush, but when you get really good with Fox, like top 100, top 50, top 60 level,
Mm.
they're doing something different, or they have a different flavor. Uh, and I tend to lose to certain types of Foxes, at least in my eyes. And so, like, try to figure out what does that mean? Is this that type of Fox in the game? And ask myself questions and try not to get too in my own thinking, because ideally you want to be in flow state, right? You want to be not thinking of anything and just punishing, which happens very rarely, but does happen. So ideally, I'm not like that, but that's what ends up happening to me is I end up taking that thought process a lot of times into tournament sets as well.
That's interesting. You said something that like I want to ask about, which was, these foxes get painted under a brush, but then, when you look at it,
Yeah.
they play differently. And that's completely correct. I think anyone would agree with that. And then you said how, some foxes I might lose to more versus others due to play style. When you get into a game, let's say with a fox or with a Marth or whatever, how are you categorizing play styles quickly and efficiently? I mean, I know you say like look for habits and stuff, but with
Yeah.
top players, you might not even get in a situation or a mix up where you can pick up on a habit. So how are you able to categorize them?
So, I mean, first, it's kind of easy nowadays because, like, if you ask me about any Fox that I will be scared of in bracket, I probably know about them in some aspect, right?
Mm.
Like, whoever it might be, other than the guy who beat me at Big House, Scal, I forgot that Fox beat me. Uh,
Shout out. Sometimes it happens, I mean, it's melee.
uh, and so, like, I think it's the options they pick or kind of their tempo. I'm not sure. It's maybe like I'm trying to think. in those times where you kind of put someone in a awkward position where like, you space like a back air in front of, a Fox's shield, and it like hits the edge of their shield and it's just too far away.
Mhm.
And like whether they like roll or try to jump or like, wave dash forward, down tilt me. It's like, it's a very different kind of vibe as soon as they like interact in that situation. Or like, I'm not, it's harder to, I guess, paint it just on a few neutral tools or something like that.
Mm.
But when I'm playing someone, it does kind of show, especially with Fox, less so with Marth. With Marth, Sheik Marth is kind of like a bozo matchup, to be honest. So like, the same as like Fox Sheik on the other way. So I don't have to think too much in that matchup.
Mhm.
I'm sorry to all the Marths. You have to hear me say that, but that matchup is, I love that matchup.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm not sure. The ones that always beat me, because it's easy to describe those ones, I guess, are the Foxes who are arrogant, but they have the tech skill to back it up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you're like this guy's playing like an ass, but he actually is allowed to do that. Like it's fine.
He gets away.
And it's like, I don't mean that in a mean way. Like I wish I could play like that. People like Stunsei, SFOP, they kind of play in that manner where it's like there's others that do it too. They're kind of like, they're just like, screw you. Like I'm literally faster than you, like they'll just like power shield my fares entirely in neutral as my Marth. And I'm like, who just does that as their neutral? It's like, screw your fare. I'm going to power shield up smash you for it.
Yeah.
And,
S-Fop
stuff like that.
SFOP is so good at
That's
that.
the one. Yeah. And so it's like those types of Fox like own me. And it used to be different. It used to be back in like 2018, 2019. It was like the SFAT type Foxes who were just like clean and simple. And like when I played them with Sheik, it felt impossible because that's a bozo matchup. Sheik Fox. That's why I play Fox.
Yeah.
So just being honest. So yeah, like those types of things, like it changes for me. And like, sometimes I can just switch to a different character and it works. And sometimes it just doesn't. And so, a lot of times it's for me, like the learning and the kind of, experiences I'm trying to gain in tournament might be from my counter picks and trying to do that to people. Part of it's just keeping people on their toes. I think it's funny,
Yeah.
I'll just go to a regional. I'm going to play Falcon versus someone and they're going to like reel back and be like, I didn't think about that. They're not going to have watched this podcast or know about Captain Kebab. So joke's on them. Or maybe me. I'll probably lose.
I want to ask you a question since you have a lot of experience with a bunch of characters, is like, do you believe that characters have like archetypes where it's like, hey, as a Falcon main, you need to be looking for X, Y, Z? Or do you think it's more malleable than that? Because I know some players are like, all right, this is what Falcon needs to do. This is what sucks about Falcon. Go for these high risk, low reward options here, da 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 da. Whereas other players are like, hey, this is how I play. This is me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think like for that, I think people in Melee don't ever account for, when talking about matchups or situations even, account for like the general skill level of who you're talking about. Because within a vacuum, like Sheik or, certain matchups might be simple and the answer might be straightforward if you're like pretty good and execute on everything. But if you're 1 and 2 or 2 and 2, or the situation might be different, and like what you can do and against the guy and what he can do against it is different. And I think like, people ideally want to like treat everything as as it is. But no, I think like it's not because of the characters, it's because of how you're using their tools. So like, something like even like soft reverse back air as Sheik, it's not very like, it's not difficult, but it's hard to utilize that, as a like a new player or something. You're not just going to be like, oh, just do this or something. It's not as simple, right? So things like F-Tilt are simpler, but I think as matchups, even like as I always think Sheik Marth, I think that matchup is pretty Sheik favored, and it only gets better for Marth as both players get better. I think that like until you get to like really the top, and even then it might still be Sheik favored. But so I think like those matchups and like your tools are based on like whether you can use them. The character can do everything, but can you use everything the character can do? And can the guy who's saying, oh, just do this, can he even do what he's saying? And so like, I'm just trying to, and I'm not one of the people who's like, oh, the situation's buttoned down, let's figure it all out and lay it out. You could probably tell that's not how I think about the game in general. I don't like to think things are solved, they're figured out, or, if someone tells me they are, I'd like to prove them wrong. For some reason, I'm just stubborn. So I don't know. That's kind of, I think with characters, it's not so cut and dry. It is if you know everything and you're just talking about, every possibility. But when you're talking about implementing it in a game of Melee, that's a different question. And why are you implementing it, right? Like this tool that you're talking about, whatever it is in this like vacuum, is it something you should implement against this character, against this person right now?
Mhm.
And on paper you might just say yes, but 2 games in, 10 games into playing that guy, you might figure out, no, it's not what I should do. And like the more I think people lock themselves down there, the worse it is, the harder it is to like even pick people's habits apart. Because when you're just playing your game and kind of like pushing them into like, what you think should happen, you're not really, responding, I guess. I don't know.
Well, that's interesting because like I'm like a 2 and 2er, on a good day. And so like, do you think like when you're giving advice to someone at that skill level, does it look different than when you're giving advice to someone, let's say top 100, just because you don't think maybe the implementation is at the same level?
Oh, definitely. Because like I think with the skill level you're talking about, a lot of things are habits that are kind of like they're mildly rewarding to do, but once you break them, you can kind of like, like a lot of foxes will like shine or like land on someone's shield or something, and then they'll do a full hop and try to like back air again or something, right? Instead of like staying on the ground and like turning around or doing, anything else, they'll do this back air or something, which works so often because at that point people's shields are stale. You can shield poke them. If they jump, it's bad. If they roll, you can land and punish them, and simple and kind of free to do. And so you just get into the motion of doing it. But then, when I'm playing them and I just see them do it, I'll just like hold down and punish them for it. And by the 3rd time, I'm like, it's a habit that they're trying to catch people, in a certain spot. But, and it might work, here and here and here. But like, if for that person, they want to beat someone better than them, which is, should be always the goal, right? You want to push yourself. You have to kind of break those habits. And so a lot of times it's way simpler habits for people that are, 2 and 2. And the advice a lot of times is to do less, not do more, or to stop doing something rather than, implement this difficult thing. Whereas if you're really good at the game, it's like, implement this like harder tech that is like, that I think you can do, punish this with this, you're punishing it with this option. But like, if you do this, it might lead to this. It's like harder. But, I tell this person in friendlies, try this, like, what I'm thinking of right now is like, doing Sheik up air as like, foxes are like get up attacking or something like that, or like they tech in place and you run off a platform, you can like up air them as you fall. And between like 40 to 70%, it's just so money. And that's not something I would tell someone to implement, if they can barely tech chase. But if you're trying to punish this fox and you're always fairing him and the fox is good enough to always tech the corner. And so no matter what, if they fall off that platform and you fair them or nair them, they're fine. You've got to do something. You got to up air them. And so that might be like, or down air them or whatever. So that might be more specific tech for someone like better. Whereas I think a lot of people have just kind of a lot of people that are at the 2 and 2 level actually get rewarded because you kind of like figure things out and you're like, this just works here and here and here. And you get rewarded for that. And like, it takes someone to tell you sometimes that this thing that you think is good and you're being rewarded for most of the time, you should stop thinking it's good all of the time, kind of. And like, or like, you're not thinking it's good, you're just doing it because like innately you're like, the way you're playing, like you think it's good, like the way you implement it, you just do it in this situation, in this situation, in this situation. So it means you think it's just like a goated option, but it's just like not. And so sometimes you need to say that to people to be like, yeah, because it's, weak to this, this, and this. And then they can think about how to do that themselves sometimes even, a lot of times it's like people just want to figure things out and do their own answers to things. But, like I said, initially, sometimes it's just stopping in that moment and thinking like, why am I doing this? Why have I done this a million times before? Some foxes like to run in and nair a lot. So I don't know.
No, that's actually a super good point. Because that, like, I guess relating to me a little bit, like, I played like shout out Braz Monkey. I played this dude's Marth, and this guy was whooping my ass. I swear I was playing good.
You know he plays Fox, right?
Yeah, he's a Fox playing. Yeah, he's a homie. I'm in Michigan, so
been playing him on Netplay.
Yeah, no, he's a big homie. Shout out Braz. But I was trying to work on a little Marth, and his Marth is good. It's way better than me. So I was getting beat up by it, and I was like, yo, I feel like I was playing good that set or that day. You know what I mean? What's going on? And I looked at the VODs and I realized the stuff that I thought is good that works on maybe, you know, ranked at, you know, gold or whatever, don't work on him because it's not good. You know what I mean?
Well,
and so like Go ahead.
Sometimes it turns into like the freest thing ever too, because like, you know, that's just how it goes sometimes. It's like this guy, you know, sometimes when I'm playing someone who might scare me, sometimes they have a habit that I could see they've been rewarded for in the past by playing, you know, some other players, but I'm just going to keep exploiting it over and over. And in a tournament set, either you adapt really quickly or it just breaks your world. And so it's, you know, and adapting very quickly to changing a years old habit, you would have done that earlier. Yeah. You wouldn't have had that habit. So it's kind of, sometimes it's really hard, but yeah, that's part of it, is like you play against some people. And that's why I think a lot of times it's good to play people better than you, because they'll punish you for those habits. But sometimes, you know, you need to have looked back at it or think about it, you know, in the past and be like, why did I think that option was good? Oh, it is good, but it's not good against everyone. You know, you can drill as Fox a lot of the time, but like, you know, I have a player in my region who is a good Fox player. And I was, you know, he sometimes beats my Sheik and Fox. Like, it scares me is my Sheik and Fox. And I beat him with DK once. And he was just like, I don't get it. And I was like, look, you're drilling me. And every time you drill DK, you're hitting me 15 times a drill. I'm just SDIing every time. Yeah. And like, I'll run that interaction 5 times in a row, the drill to get shined. And if I get one grab out of those 5, it's money. And so like, I'm down for you to dash dance and approach me with drill, because I'm just going to turn my control stick into dust, get somewhere and grab you. And I don't care what, like, I'm just spamming. I don't really care. But like, you know, it's like forcing that and being like, okay, well, let me not drill anymore. And then it's like not give him chance to SDI the thing. Cause like, you know, you're giving me opportunities to kind of create chaos in that situation. And, you know, low tier is going to love that.
I got a question then relating to that. We're talking about a lot of melee, but I'm just like, I'm super
That's
interested.
Fine.
Cool.
Yeah, no problem.
When you, like, how do you discern, okay, that was a, like, let's say you're watching your VOD back and you lost neutral or something, or you got punished for something. How do you say, all right, that's a bad habit for me versus like, okay, I just lost like a 50-50 mix up or something like that? Like, how do you differentiate those two?
I guess, I don't think about that too much, honestly, which might be weird. But if in the game, I can tell in moments it feels bad to get beaten. And if I guess how I do that is I don't do it in VOD review, is I'm stubborn. So if I got beaten in a situation where I think it's good, I'll run it 2 or 3 times again. And if I got beat every time, either this guy is goated and he has a reaction speed that no one's ever shown me, or like the thing I'm doing is not that good. So often I'll just actually force that myself. Like, I'm stubborn. And so in the moment, it might not even be, like clairvoyantly, like, I'm going to test this. I'm just like, no, fuck you. I'm going to run this again. I'm going to try it. No, I'm going to try it again. No, I'm going to try it again. If it doesn't work 3 times, it's probably not a 50-50. So I don't know. Like, sometimes it's just like a bit of trial and error, and it like takes someone who's just as stubborn from their end and just as like sharp 4 to 5 times in a row to prove to you that neutral thing or that situation is not as good as you thought it was. And so for me, like, these Foxes that are the ones that I'm talking about, that are arrogant, but that have the good tech skill, they will punish me over and over again for those same things. And they're not going to back down from that sort of challenge. And so like, you know, that's the dynamic game where I'm like, okay, I'm going to try it a few times, maybe sometimes stubbornly out of like, you know, anger. But then at the end, I try to figure something out and be like, okay, they're just actually beating that option. They're not going to let that work. And that's just, maybe it's just them. Maybe it's just SFOP who can power shield every like fair, but the next time someone does it 3 times, I'll know and I'll remember that, you know, because some people will do that. So, you know, next time I'll play some guy I never played before, and I'll, you know, maybe I'll fair him twice as Marth and he'll power shield both of them. I'll be like, hold up, I've been here before. And, you know, that's all that it takes. And it might take me losing to SFOP to have learned that, and that's fine. And so, you know, that's kind of how I at least try to rationalize those things. And like, even if I can lose in the moment, you know, through like one of those things like you're talking about, it's kind of like, it's clearly like in this situation, this guy, it's not a 50-50. It's not a mix up. He's just beating it. And sometimes in the moment, it's hard to like, you know, get told that and like by the game, but the game tells you that. So I don't know. It's like, you know, whether it's VOD review or during the game, you just got to pay attention. You just got to try to pay attention the whole time, which is hard to do, but
yeah. last
That's my
question.
advice, I guess.
Last question on this before I move on.
Yeah.
When you realize, because I think this is just so important for people. I'm learning a lot too. So like when you realize, okay, this is a bad habit. He's beating me. This option does not work in this scenario. How do you find the answer for that scenario? Is it through more trial and error for you? Is it more outside the game or VOD review, or just thinking about, okay, this scenario, okay, he did this. I think I could do this.
Yeah.
Like,
So sometimes, so like every set that's close, it's one in the margins, right? I was like, oh, if I just missed that edge guard, but it's like you've missed 30 other things, and that guy missed 31 other things in the last, 5 minutes or whatever. So I guess the way I see it is like, if you can just focus on one or two things and do that, one thing even, and do that, it makes a world of difference. So for me, I'm kind of, my answer is I switch characters. so like say this fox or Falco is just jumping all the time. And I don't know what it is about his fast fall timings, or what options he's using, how he's coming off the platforms, his shield drops, his SDI off of platforms to then get off the platform and hit me. And I'm just jumping at him with Sheik and I'm getting owned every time. But it's close. I'm going to go Marth and be like, every time he jumps, he's going to get up aired. I don't care what happens. And if I just think that, everything else stays the same, is fine. And just that difference, just that one thing that I feel like I'm getting exploited for, if you can swing it, if you can change it, if you can force them to then have to adapt to that, to then be like, oh, this Marth is just up airing me. I can't do these aerials anymore. Maybe they have to then do something. And sometimes they'll crack. Sometimes it's just a matter of throwing a number of those things. And thankfully, I got like 4 characters now, so like I could keep doing that. but that's how it used to be for me. Is like I'll try to like hit this fox and jump, and I'll be like, no, I'm not going to let him jump. I'm going to play Marth, and he's not allowed to jump. Or like, because I have this stubborn habit where I want to up air him with Sheik. I'm gonna want to do that. Like I know me myself. He jumps, the Falco jumps. I'm gonna want to hit him or chase him.
Yeah, I do.
I might as well force myself to chase him with the better character for that. And so when he does it and I go for him in the situation when I want to go for it, I'm like, yes, now I want to up air him.
It works.
Instead of a 50-50 trade with Sheik, it's an 80-20 trade with Marth. The probability that move, like that situation, goes in my favor. You got the big ass sword. Yeah, it's way better.
Cool. Yeah.
and so like just that one thing has won me sets before. Like just that one option, and it might be a different thing against a different player for a different matchup. And if you play one character, you just have to change what you're doing and why. And sometimes I do have to do that with the same character, because sometimes certain characters I don't switch.
Yeah. I mean, so one question on that. See, you got me asking all these questions, homie. I heard when Mango, he switched it up. He was playing Fox against Plup. I forgot which grand finals it was. And then he switched it up randomly. Game 5, bam, bird. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he said, I believe that it put him at a disadvantage and me at an advantage, breaking out the bird all of a sudden. Do you agree with that? Like when you switch characters, it puts it more honest on your opponent versus on you? Or do you feel like it could be sort of like, I just didn't, you go from Sheik to Foxing, like, my Fox just doesn't have it. You know what I mean?
So sometimes in the first 25 seconds of the game, I know I fucked up. I'm like, no. I'm like, oh my God, what have I done? I picked Marth against this guy.
Yeah.
I lost the first 4 neutral interactions. I jumped afterwards. He back aired me. He's at 7%. I'm at 0. And I'm like, what have I done? But alternatively, right? So you can do 2 things. So like in that situation that Mango's in, right? Imagine that Plup really doesn't like the Falco and he loses the first neutral interaction. You have so much momentum. You might be getting this guy, right? And alternatively, even if he's comfortable with it, if you are as well and you just win a little bit, you can kind of break that too and be like, okay, you thought this was good. Why did you think this was good? Look at what's happening. You know what I mean? And so sometimes it just works out. But I do think like you having the power to do that is part of it too. Because whether it's stage counter pick, right? Oh, I can go Marth now. And you would have never thought I could go FD. I'm going to pick FD now. And then now they're like, oh God, is he going to play Marth? Is he going to play DK? Is he going to do this? And it's like, no, I'll just play the same character maybe. And like getting them thinking, getting them scared. I think it's funny. That's why I do it a lot of the time. It puts them in an uncomfortable position. And I do it from a place of like, I've done this so many times. Like for them, it might be the first time someone's ever switched in this manner, especially when it was the box thing. It was the first time a lot of people had ever seen someone switch to box. But for me, I was like, I was like, everyone at the local, they know this. They're like, oh, this guy, he's doing this again. I have both my controllers there at the local when I was doing this. Nobody thought it was anything. But then I go to a regional or a major, and they're like, you get some reaction out of it or some friction. And I think that happens even with switching characters, especially Game 5 Grand Finals. Yeah, like it's like, what if you just switched Game 5 after you played the entire tournament, the last game of the tournament, no matter what, you want to put on your Falco? And Mango says, yes, I'll put it on my Falco. And that takes some confidence to do that. It takes some, you're kind of exerting your will in some way. And I think like, if you just believe you're doing that, it's fine. I think you can do that, and it can work out, or it can not.
Yeah. I want to switch it up a little bit. You know, one thing that's really impressed me is like, especially during this talk, is your ideas on self-improvement and how you're able to be dynamic in all these different avenues of Melee and still find ways to improve and enjoy the game. But at the same time, you're a fantastic competitor. I mean, you've competed with the best of them and you can hold your weight. How are you able to balance that competitive drive that, all good Melee players have with, willing to do certain things in certain situations that might not have the best outcome in that certain tournament, but will lead to more self-improvement?
You got to kind of, and this is kind of a bad time to talk about it, with everything rankings wise and everything, people talk, number one just got decided literally yesterday, right, on a bout of skill. But like a lot of Melee players, they tie their self-worth to their ranking or their skill level or something like that. I think it's like a really toxic way to, for your own sake. I think it can be very motivating, but for me, it's not motivating to feel like I need to compete. I need pressure, even Zane yesterday, I remember him talking about like he felt at one point he wanted Cody to lose while watching him in like grand finals. And he's like, why? Like, why do I want this guy who's my friend to lose? Because I would be number one over him or something. This is something he's reflecting on himself. And so it's like, you want to, ideally, in my perspective, you want to fight that type of thinking all the time. And I try to. And honestly, this is weird to say, but I only had that real mentality after Summit. So I went to Summit with the best of them, as you said. And that was when I realized, I was like, I don't want to keep thinking that like, I didn't really like want to be I didn't care about being a top competitor anymore at all. I didn't value that aspect of who I am as a person. And so like, I could still switch characters and troll, and I happen to gotten better, or, I think my year now is better than my year where I got 94th last year. So it's like worked out, but that's to no effect of like intent really. If anything, the opposite. I think the simple answer is ego. It's just you have to separate some ego, and I still have it, of course. Everyone has it in regards to their game. But yeah, I really don't want to or care to value, like the number or anything like that, especially like maybe it's because I've gotten it at least once or something, but I really couldn't care less. And like, I don't know. I don't. Yeah, it's hard to do that when, you're trying to compete in this game. Cause I never had any like, illusions that I would be like number one or anything. Cause I remember in college, like I said, I was trying super hard. I was like, I'm trying so hard and I'm getting better. But the people who are number one are putting like 3 times the amount of time I am, and they've been doing it for a decade. So that means I have to sacrifice this, and this in terms of like try to even get close to there. And I was like, it's not worth it. I'll just do it for fun.
You just call it there. You're like, yep,
yeah, nah. Sort of, yeah. And so that's why I don't really go to like convention center tournaments anymore. I don't think they're as fun unless like I can drive 3 hours to them, like Riptide or Big House or something. And so like it's not as likely for me to go to SmashCon. And I think that does take away from some parts of like me being a better competitor, or like what me as Free Palestine in the Melee scene being like an established player or something. But it's just not something I care or value right now. I have way more fun learning to play Falcon at the local. And if at a regional I can pull it out for some reason, then that probably feels more rewarding than getting 3 spots higher on the top 100 for playing Sheik and trying super hard. So like, for me, it's like, both are good. I do care about the other one. Like I do at least like want to try to compete and be a good competitor. But it's not really something I would value over having fun, because if I stop having fun, I'm just going to stop playing. And so in any moment, if I'm like, I'm not having fun for this reason, like I don't like this matchup, I don't like want to go to this tournament because it feels like this pressure is on me or something, I just wouldn't do it, because I think that builds like resentment towards the game and the scene, and it's no good. So
what are what are some of the things that you define as fun then? What are some of the things that you, when you go to a tournament or when you go to a Smash Fest, you're like, yo, X, Y, and Z, this was the stuff that made me smile today. What are some of the things that keep you going in the scene?
I mean, simply put, I love the game of Melee.
Mm,
Dynamic Melee is such like a beautiful thing when you're playing someone and they're adapting to what you're doing and they're changing what you're doing and it's close. And it doesn't matter whether it's friendlies or a tournament or warming up before a tournament for me. So, the social aspect is of course a thing. And like, even the aspect that I don't like, you know, the rankings and all that, like, like I just said, for me personally, like on myself, but, I think competing is good for me. Like I don't really compete in other aspects of my life right now at 25. So,
yeah, yeah.
so that aspect is good. So like, even if, healthy competition, even if I feel kind of sad or something about it, it's like, okay, that's at least some feeling that I'm getting that like, if I didn't try and I didn't earnestly put my effort in, I wouldn't have felt that. So like, even if it's a tough loss or a fun victory or whatever it is, playing doubles with Polish, probably to answer you, is like one of my favorite things in majors. It's like, I love playing doubles and we're going to get our major win maybe someday.
Oh yeah, they're awesome. I love Polish. Shout out Polish.
Yeah.
They're super cool.
Yeah. Like, so like those types of things like keep me going to tournaments. And like, I've made so many friends over the years. I'm going to keep going, but all of those things are fun. The reality is that there's way more in that bucket than the other.
Mm.
And that's, I think, hopefully that's what I just try to keep prioritizing over time. And like, if someday singles stops being fun, but doubles is fun, you'll just see me as a doubles competitor. That's just what's going to happen. Now, I'm the same type of person where if I travel to a tournament, I'm going to enter both if I'm there, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If I fly, but maybe in 2 years, that's not. And I'm like, singles is not fun anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I don't know. That's kind of, yeah, I still play. I still think ranked is fun. I know people don't like ranked, but
yeah,
I like the fact that the guy on the other side, he doesn't know I'm about to switch characters. Oh, it's even better. It's even better on ranked, dude. Because me, they know, but like I get to change around even more.
Yeah, that's funny. Are you worried a little bit that like the Melee scene is losing a little bit of that healthy competition and is hyper fixating on rankings, on maybe the worst side of competition? And if so, do you think that there's some steps that we can do in this community in order to prevent that? Because I agree. I feel like, for 99% of players, their goal isn't going to be number one. They never will be. I mean, number one is one person. So it's like, how do we have an environment for people who want to go for number one, be happy, but also like people like me, for example, be happy,
So I guess it's really to each his own, because some people are only really motivated by that like drive of losing and that like that like almost hatred, and the passion, like the passion after you lose or you win. You're like about to yell or something. I'm not that type of person, but I've seen people like that in my scene throughout my entire life, where like when they lose, they're like, I'm in the next game. Let's play friendlies. And I'm like, you're pissed. I don't want to play friendlies with you. Like that'd be the last thing I want to do. But they're in that mentality and that's their drive. And they're like, no, I'm going to play another 2 hours today so that next week it doesn't happen. I'm not that type of person. I'll take a break or whatever. But different people get their motivation out of different things. So if that's what you want and that's your drive, and some people even at the very, very top, that's still their drive to prove that they're still the best. And it's like, you're X in the world. Like, what do you mean? You've already, to me, like you've already proven anything. Like, what are you still fighting for? But like, like why are you still, but that's what keeps them in that competitive drive. So like for them, I'd rather them keep that, if it might be healthier or whatever to do something else, but it's not for everyone. I don't know. That's just how competition is. And so like for people who are, I guess, just like going to their local and stuff, I think it's more important to focus on learning just to get better at the game, no matter what that means, versus like, oh, I got the local PR or something. Because like, if we're gonna say that like it's bad to do that at the top levels, then it's really meaningless to do that across the board for like local and stuff. And it's really meaningful to get your local PR and it's good motivating. But if that's your end goal, what are you gonna do once you get number 8? You're gonna stop? You're gonna stop like caring about playing? You're gonna stop like when you go to the local and you start losing, you're like, well, whatever. I'm like already established, I'm like, so I don't know. It's whatever keeps you motivated is good. And for me, that's having fun and that's taking out those types of like that way of thinking. But for other people, it's the opposite. And, and some people are able to do that and stay competing and stuff, but that's not for me. But I really think it's, it's hard to do that as a scene as a whole, because people just respond to it differently. And sometimes it's good for people to do that. So I don't know. I've got, I've just been explaining what's good for me and how that works for me. But I know for other people, it's like the opposite. And, it might not make sense from my perspective, but I'm like, okay, you just lost and you want to go money match the guy. Like, I don't do like, that doesn't make sense to me. But for other people, they're like, yeah, what do you mean? You just beat me $5 on it. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
So yeah, like, if you think that's good, I don't think that tends to drive like good improvement in that moment. But that drive, even if you lose that $5, might make you go home and practice 3 extra hours. Then so be it.
You've chose your fate. Yeah.
Yeah. So be it. Yeah. Go for it, man. Yeah.
Oh,
and it makes things sometimes fun and different. So I'm down with it too.
Yeah. We all need different types of people for sure. I mean, I definitely agree with you. Like sometimes though, that can definitely weigh on someone's mentality, like, and turn into like burnout. Have you ever experienced like burnout in all your years playing? And if so, how did you like come back to the game?
Maybe a little bit after Summit. That was because I've never really taken long breaks. I mean, I used to go to the Middle East, Palestine for like 3 months at a time. And I did that twice, I think, during like when I was a Melee competitor. And, in that aspect, I don't really have anyone to play. So I would take a break. But burnout at Summit was the biggest one for me because I felt like, I had gone there and just to share a quick story, like, I don't know if you remember that Summit that I went to was when there was that Goom Wave drama where it's like, oh, we're going to get the Goom code versus the Rian code, whatever.
Yeah,
I don't
cheating.
I don't claim to know about any of that stuff. So
yeah, it goes over my head too.
I had quit my job for $10 an hour like 3 months before that, right? So I was pretty much broke, and I went to Summit, which was, thank you, by the way, everybody who did. It's still like amazing. I got the poster right there.
Yeah, shout out.
I still can't believe I did that. We got there, but point being is that like I remember going there, and I had my controller, and these competitors were there, and they're like they're like the guys who are they're like the real guys, right? I just kind of show up. It's always at Summit. It's like it kind of feels like there's some outsider in terms of like the vibes or like what they're there to do or why they're there, right? And I'm definitely for me that felt apparent. And I remember like not having really any money after that because I had to quit my job, and I was donating all of the winnings from Summit, which was like more than I had in my bank account at that moment. And I'm like, okay, my controller, Violence opened it up. Shout out to Violence, he helped fix it, and he said it was like a shock horror. Like the controller was awful. Like the thing I said with the stick, it was no good. My pads were perforated on the Y, so I was missing like maybe like 15% of short hops just because my button was bad.
Really?
And I'm watching these people like update their Goom waves, and I watch Cody right after getting Goom's update. Right, this is like in day 2. He hits like 15 perfect pivot F tilts with Fox. And he just like updated his controller. He starts hitting perfect pivot F tilt. He does 15 of them in a row, and I'm watching. And I asked someone like how much the controller was. It was like $350 for the base, like for just like the thing itself. And I was like, I just like felt like I was not the right person for being there. And like,
I feel that. Okay.
And I was like, yeah. And so after that, most people like kind of feel like a drive after Summit. You get the Summit boost, which I think I did. I got way better because of it. It was a very good experience for like learning as a competitor. But I realized that that's just not my future. And like, that's just, I realized that at that moment, which a lot of people maybe thought that the opposite would happen. But I just realized it's like, man, I can't claim to have done all these things for prep. Like I said, I don't solo practice or any of these things. So like, that's just not me. And, I happen to still get the W, at least one W while there.
Yeah.
Which,
yeah.
I'll take that. Like I
Yes,
said,
sir.
Bozo matchup. So like, but yeah, that was the most burnout. Cause like after that, I was just like, what am I doing? Like, why am I still like trying super hard and all this? And I was like, I don't know. Like, it's like, I can't be like them, kind of was like my mentality. Or my, like, I guess that was like my biggest burnout, or like my biggest like soul searching, where I was like, like, even then, like, it's like that should have proven that I am capable of that. But like, capability is kind of different than like what I want. So that's fine sometimes. And, if I can go to another Summit or another event like that, I'll try, for whatever reason, or not Summit. I would never go to that again. I would never like campaign or whatever.
Yeah, that was crazy back in the day.
But like, I still value those things. Yeah. But it's just, it's not valued over everything else. And it kind of defined for me, at least, it's not who I am when I was there. I was like, I'm just not like this. It's just like what I realized. I don't know.
Was that self-realization, like what were the emotions that came with that self-realization after working so hard to get to that point? I mean, was it like a I could see it go in two different ways, so I'm interested to
Yeah.
hear what you're saying. I could either see it like, disappointment, sadness, maybe a regret and putting this much time, or I could see it as like almost like a relief, a burden off of your shoulders, and maybe a point for growth. Was it a mixture of both? Was it one or the other? What was it like for you?
So I mean, it wasn't. It was a mixture of both for sure. But at least for
Hmm.
me, I've enjoyed every moment in Melee that I've had really, and I really enjoyed the whole process. So there would never be a point where I looked back and regret,
Mm.
even no matter what. So like even if everything I did got me there, and I whatever I thought about that, like whether it was what I wanted, like in terms of like continuing to do this thing, like as much as I could to get to these tournaments and do this type of thing,
Hmm.
um, I enjoyed my time up to that point and since that point. And so like for me, it's not, I don't really care too much about it. I don't reflect on it that much. And I don't think in that moment, it did that much for me other than allowed me to really just pick up box and kind of screw around. And like, and I did. And, um, I like for me, it's like not caring whether or not someone like puts an asterisk in my name. Like maybe if I keep doing this stuff, then like you can't put an asterisk because he's always doing that bullshit. So like you know what I mean? Like that's kind of the goal. So it's like, okay, what if I go to a tournament and I want to play this character or that character, I don't care whether you like, like I'd rather not be. Yeah, so it freed me up in that regard to kind of pursue other things in Melee that are detrimental on like to most kind of in most ways. But
Mm.
and I value that. I've done a lot in Melee, I guess, and I'm doing this stuff which is new still to me. And so I'll continue to do that until I don't find it really fun or anything. And maybe one day I'm like, you know what, I'm going to play Sheik and focus on competing again and get to it. But
Mm.
for now, I don't know. I'm just kind of enjoying my time.
Awesome. Hey, that's the best, right? If you're having fun, that's what the game's
Mhm.
for, right? So I really
Yeah.
respect that answer. Really respect it. I want to switch it up a little bit. I want to talk
Yep.
about the incredible work that you did for the Netplay charity tournament, Netplay for Palestine. Can you break down like how did that start? Like where did that idea come from? How you were able to turn, I'm sure a lot of like, negative emotions for lack of, I mean,
Yeah.
to say it kindly, to something positive through Melee. I mean, it's really inspirational.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so first it was unfortunately the second net play for Palestine because we had to run one in 2020, I
Hmm.
believe.
Yeah, that's what I was
Um,
referencing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The first one,
so I
well,
mean,
both, I guess. Yeah, yeah,
so like I was saying, when I was reflecting then, like during Netflix for Palestine 2, I really didn't want to have to do a third one.
yeah.
Like that was like my thought. I was like, man, like it's amazing that we can get all these people here, but like it's sad that we have to do this again. Like
Yeah.
that's what I realized. And in reality, like this type of thing doesn't come together without like really the people who put it together, which is like Jake Spear and Oates and all these TOs and the people who designed the shirts and the people who set up it's an ungodly amount of work to organize that sort of thing. And I really, my heart goes out to everyone who put their time in, because it's like for us it was we do it because it feels like there's nothing we can do. And
Yeah.
like the fear of like, especially right now, 2 months into the war in Gaza, people have kind of forgotten that it's happening. But like, you've got to imagine that like when they said they were going to cut off the food and water and electricity, that happened 2.5 months ago almost. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So, that's the situation we're living in now. And it's there's not anything like much people can do. But from my perspective, all I can really do is tell people, and that's what I want to do, is tell people what's happening to us as like a people and kind of the situation, and just kind of give that information in my perspective. And if we can do that through a tournament and kind of raise awareness in that regard, that's yeah, there's not much we can really do to change the situation. That's just the reality.
Yeah.
But if people can kind of hear me speak or hear other people speak or come together for Melee and see that, what we've got to say about this and why we're saying it, that's all we can really do. And that's why we do it. It comes out of that kind of like, that's what you can do. This is sort of the stuff that you can do. You can go to demonstrations and protests, which I really recommend people who are listening to this do, because they're ongoing, they're constant. Until we get a free Palestine, it's not gonna the fight doesn't stop really. And so that sort of thing. And yeah, for through Melee, it's just like everyone brought what they can do as people, whether
Mm,
you're a tournament organizer or a designer, feeling like you were able to contribute and do something. That's that's how we can feel at least something, some positive way about it.
yeah,
So in such a negative situation, right?
a horrible situation. I mean, ungodly situation. I mean, did you find catharsis in doing that? I mean, I know that there is so much work and you have to be reminded of that situation again. I mean, it'll never leave your mind, obviously, but like just having that in the forefront of your brain and also, putting your neck on the line a little bit, your tag is Free Palestine. You
Yeah,
have to be the guy who like because you're born as a Palestinian, you have to be the
yeah.
guy who's like, I'm that guy. Is that like an extra added pressure? Is that a burden? Is that a blessing? I mean, how do you look at that?
So you definitely like in that position, you always want to think of the negative aspects of it and like feel excuses or reasons to feel like oh, I wouldn't do this thing because it would put me under excess pressure or something. But a great Palestinian speaker, Mohammed Al Kurd, said, I remember when I went to the DC protest, he said like whether you're protesting for Palestine in terms of fear for online hate or your job or whatever it is, it's really, for me, it's nothing in comparison to the fear of the people in Palestine right now in Gaza and the West Bank. um, it's not even like a fraction of a fraction.
Hmm.
So like for me, it's like that's the least I can do because like it really is meaningless in comparison to that. Having being 60 days into a war and hearing your 4,000th F-16 fly overhead, it's like it's not comparable. It's not even close. So
Mm.
yeah.
How do you not fall into the trap of completely diminishing your, I mean, your emotions are important and they are who make you who you are. And how do you not completely disregard and diminish them? I mean, was this like an outlet to um release that type of emotion, or are you just completely saying, you know what, my struggle is their struggle, I'm giving myself up to help?
Well, I mean, it's a mix of both. You do what you can because you want to do it, and then the next thing you want to do, you have an excuse for not doing it. And I
Mm,
try to fight against those excuses, really.
mm,
And like most of those excuses will come down to fear, self-preservation, those types of things, and they're valid for the reasons you said, whether it's online hate or pressure, whatever. But in magnitude and scale, it's not comparable. So like
mhm.
that's at least what helps me keep going, I guess, or like fight past that. So like what I feel is what I feel, but like sometimes it's worthwhile to at least for me, it's a bit of perspective.
Definitely. I want
you
to
know
I want to mention one thing as well. I'll be linking this below, which is your website that you made, which actually moved me to tears. The last part of it moved me to tears, where you said, I want people to remember what, like, this is what we're fighting for, and the beautiful pictures that you posted of Palestine. So I'll link it below. I know a lot of people like on these podcasts and they're like, oh, please click the link. Da, da, da. Please click the damn link. It's beautiful. I mean, it's truly beautiful. You put a lot of work into that. I mean, where did that come from? I mean, I don't even know how to make a website. Like, was that something that just weighed on your mind? I want to get this story out. Like,
yeah, kind of like it was a mix of like, and I still want to complete that because it's not done as far as I'm concerned. I have way more to say and think.
mm,
um and But in reality, it was just I knew people wanted, because when this stuff started 2 months ago, people were kind of asking me, and I had an earlier twit longer explaining the situation, and I felt like I really had to break down the current situation further because really it's just answering people's questions was my initial thing. And since like I always say, my DMs are open. Please like ask me about anything that's going on there. I'll talk to you as long as you're talk to me in good faith. I'm here for an open dialogue, and like that sort of thing. Like I said, it feels like it's like the only thing I can do
mm,
sometimes, or it's
mm-hmm.
like, and I know I had that website made. I was gonna build in like a professional website or something, but I don't know how to build a website either. And so
Yeah.
I just kind of like put text boxes on there and designed it, and had some friends like help format things because my writing's no good. But yeah, it was really the only thing I felt like I just wanted to explain the situation, because the situation, it's not exactly complicated, but there's a lot to it. And if you want to know about it, and so that you feel confidence in answering bad faith questions. That's really why I build those types of things. So when people, push back with some simple talking point, you could say, no, like, I know the situation. Here's what I've seen. Here's what the reality is. Here's what human rights groups are saying about the situation, about the occupation, about the apartheid. And here's why what you're saying is bullshit. And even if you don't have to say it to anyone, just know that when you're reading something, you at least know, our side kind of in the situation as I've seen it, as I've lived it, and as people continue to live it, day by day. And, I'm from the West Bank, I'm a Palestinian citizen, and the situation there is absolutely abhorrent, and, 2 to 3 children are killed every day in the West Bank since October 7th. And there's no military or strategic explanation, reason, justification for any of that. And so, like, people like to deflect and they like to not know. But if you don't know what the West Bank is, how can you talk about that? How can you understand that? And, that's kind of, even explaining, oh, it's on the West Bank, it's the east side of the country because it's on the west side of the Jordan River. You have to explain these things so that people feel confident, at least, making their own understanding of the situation. And really, from my perspective, I don't really, I'm trying to persuade people, but in reality, I truly believe as long as I could just tell you what's there, truthfully, the situation, I think people's own moral compass will persuade them towards my perspective. That's my personal opinion. So I just want people to know about what's happening, and that's what's happening.
My last question on this, and this is, I think, more for me because I want to learn a little bit, is how do you deal with like the burden of ignorance that you see about this? Because, like, for example, like, I'm Ethiopian. Most people don't even know Ethiopia's in a war right now. You know what I mean? Like, the amount of ignorance that I see about the Palestinian people. I mean, Malcolm X was writing letters about this stuff in 1964. You know what I mean? Like, there's pamphlets and Black liberations about Gaza in the 1960s. I mean, this has been going on, and it's been clear as cut, and just so ignorant. You know what I mean? So it's like, how do you deal with that without just losing, pulling out that hair of yours,
Well, it's like, especially in the US, it's so easy to not care about what's happening somewhere so far away, but I think part of it is like, it's a bit of propaganda, of course, like our, whatever I'm talking about here is not exactly covered favorably by most US and Western media. Yeah. And so, and at the same time, it's like, it's the amount of questions I've had that is like, oh, is Palestine a city, or you're talking about Pakistan? You know what I mean? Like, like an infinite number of that type of thing. And really, I mean, it's like, okay, it's almost impossible to be like, okay, I got to explain this whole situation, and you don't even know like what I'm even talking about at all.
You can't even point it in a map. Yeah.
But I think, but in reality, it's something that it just you have to explain it from wherever starting point people are at, and whether that's at a pretty far understanding or a pretty scarce one. It's not my position to have known that, and I've been in spots where I don't know about things, and I'd really like to be treated with that same amount of compassion towards like understanding, so that when someone says, oh, like, you're Free Palestine, that's like a city or something, and they're like genuine about it, like that's what they don't know, then that's where I start from. So it's like it's unfortunate that that's the situation in the US, but it's been the situation in the US for any number of foreign policy, anything to do with other people, however many clips you can find of people trying to support the war in Iraq who can't put a map in front of them and
can't find it. Yeah.
But in reality, as an American, if you are listening to this, you should know and care, because your tax dollars are being used to do this type of shit. So it's like, when we're seeing like the situation in America deteriorating in a lot of ways, and people are kind of trying to seek to understand why our infrastructure is crumbling and stuff. We have an infinite amount of money to send to Israel so that they can continue this war. And that's kind of, and even if you don't agree or disagree with that, you should at least understand that that's happening. We're contributing to it, whether we like it or not, and whether we're a part of that or not. You know what I mean? We're kind of like, as Americans, we're in it. So you should at least know what you have a responsibility, at least in my perspective, to know, especially. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to say before I switch it up a little bit and wrap it up, because I got a couple questions for you outside of
Mhm.
Melee and your hobbies, but I do want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for what you've done. I mean, I just hope that you know that like you should be proud of yourself for taking this on and for spreading, the
Yeah,
cause. I mean, just solidarity to you, homie, and it's
I
all
appreciate that.
love, man, all love for real.
Appreciate it.
Let's switch it up a little bit. This is
Mhm.
a podcast not only talking about Melee and the stuff that we do through it, but also, the type of person that you're outside of Melee. I want to talk about geography a little bit. First off,
Mhm.
why did you pick geography? And second off, is it as hard of a major as I think it would be? Because I feel like it would be a super hard major.
So answer is twofold. I picked it because I was a computer science dropout in college. Like I didn't want to do computer science anymore, and because it was easier than computer science. So relatively. So I don't know. I understood it because I don't know. I like to think. I guess explaining things spatially. Geography is like why things are where they are, and just trying to understand that for any reason or context. There's probably some explanation.
Mhm.
And I think it helps me to seek to understand the world and the current situation, whether it's political or just physical geography. My backgrounds are of high res images of the world on my computer and stuff, and so it's just what I enjoy. I don't think it's that hard, but I enjoy it. So I think anything that would have that I would enjoy to this level, I would think probably I would hope to think isn't like truly difficult, but yeah, it's not as hard as you probably think. Yeah, I don't know. Most colleges, it's a Bachelor of Arts, not Science.
Okay.
If that, but I got a Bachelor of Science. They let me get away with that.
Do you still work in that field in the
Yeah,
geography? What do you do,
I
if
do.
I may ask?
I do geography and data science. So like,
Nice.
yeah, that's what I do.
Respect. What do you do outside of work in Melee? I mean, you said that Melee is your main competitive outlet. I
Mhm.
mean, do you play any other video games, whether competitive or non-competitive?
Yeah. Currently, I guess the other big video game I've played across like the last time I've since played Melee really is RuneScape, old school RuneScape. I play a
Okay.
lot of that.
I've heard that
Um,
so much from the Melee players. Shout out
yeah,
Morse.
it lines up.
Yeah. Morse did,
And
I think
then
he was playing RuneScape during our interview, in fact.
I wouldn't do that. See, my hands are over here.
Yeah. Hey, I don't mind. He was giving great answers as long as he's talking, you know what I mean?
Click over here. Hey, hold on.
Wait a second.
I keep a lot of fish and I have some
Oh, okay.
plants.
What type of
So
fish?
I have 4 fish tanks right now.
Holy shit.
I have red tail rasboras in one, which are these little green fish.
Mhm.
I have these tiny blue fish called neon tetras. I have white cloud minnows in this paludarium that's like right next to me, which
Mhm.
is it's a fish tank and then like an open air terrarium on top. So there's like a little arch with like rocks and plants and stuff. And then I don't know if you can see it. I have like a desert. I have
Mhm.
a big sandbox pretty much that I filled with a bunch of cactuses.
That's awesome.
It's
So
in
it's
my
like a
office.
little. That's super cool.
Yeah, so I do a lot of that stuff, little terrariums. I have a couple terrariums here. So I
Mhm.
do that as like a little thing, nature and, art within nature, I guess, trying to create these little ecoscapes. I have a bunch of shrimp and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things
Do you
that I like
like?
to
Are
keep me
you
occupied.
are you interested in like marine life? Like, I feel like having a fish, shrimp, like
Yeah.
what? Some people are dog people, some people are cat people. What do you like about the marine? I guess.
Uh, I think it's building like the environment for
Mhm.
me. Because I even enjoy before I put fish in a tank. I really enjoy this like building like kind of like not art, but like in a way it's like a kind of um, natural ecosystem that might not exist naturally in some way, and I create it. Like the fish that I have in the tank next to me. Some of them are from Japan, and the others are from South America, and
Mhm.
they're just vibing in a tank together. They're fish; they don't think about it. Um, but I think it's cool, and so like if I could get to build like a little like I have a little box and I get to build a kind of a world in it, and to see it kind of flourish is like I've been doing it for over 10 years, and it is kind of hard to do, but once you kind of do it so often, you kind of understand how to balance the water and all of that, and then you can start doing it in many different ways, and that's kind of where I find the fun in it. So for me, it's sometimes not even as much for the fish or anything. It's just kind of creating a little world that that kind of self sustains itself, and it's balanced, and
Mhm.
it's working for everything involved that's in there.
That's awesome. That's a cool answer. I like that
Yeah.
answer a lot. What do you do to relax? I always love to ask people this. Like, let's say you're no melee, your controller's broken, all right? So you got
Yeah.
no RuneScape. Like, what are you doing to just chill out? You watching TV? You're reading a book? You're listening to music?
No, I'm doing the plants thing.
You're just
That's
planning.
the same. Yeah, it's plants. It's doing the I mean, like, you know, it does take some maintenance, but no, really, like that's definitely the most relaxing thing. You know, put on some like quiet music and work on a terrarium. Here, let me show you one because I can at least get it.
I'd love to. Hell yeah. For those on Spotify, he's going to show us some of his beautiful plants. Look at that.
This is like a little. This is the glass is not going to help me here. Let me make sure that. Okay. So we've got. So you see, it's like a little jar.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Tower, a bunch of different plants, and so it's like a humid terrarium.
Mm-hmm.
So this one's constantly, like wet and humid, and so you got to spray it often. But like that, this, is one of them. Yeah, I guess this is a better wide view. But and there's like little bugs in there. I know people don't like knowing that. But, when you build like a terrarium like that, one of the things you got to understand is you put like the little tiny bugs in there that help decompose the plant matter. And
you have to have bugs in there. Yeah, you have to.
And so that one I really haven't touched it in over 3 months. Like I just opened that for the first time in a couple months, and
really
it's flourishing. And so like little things like that, like it takes time, it takes a bit of like care. And I'm kind of like normally not a very careful, tactful person with like how I do things. I'm like kind of stubborn and fast with it.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to nature, you kind of have to be, you have to do that slowly. You have to do it with like care. And one thing I want to show you because he just showed up is my cat. So there's my cat too. I love him. His name is Zaytun, which means olive in Arabic.
Yeah. Awesome. There's some things that go from Amharic to Arabic. So yeah, that's awesome.
Everywhere like within like 600 miles of the Mediterranean and like surrounding, it's something similar.
Yeah. I remember one of my Arabic friends was talking about his house like to his mom or something, and I was like, yo, I actually know the sentence that you just said.
Yeah, it was like 25% of it.
Like I can't
words.
Speak
you can bridge it. Yeah,
no, it's beautiful though. Last question I have for you before we wrap up. Thank you so much for coming on, by the way. This has been an awesome talk. What are your plans for 2024 and what are you excited for in the new year?
I plan to, I guess, continue what I'm doing. I've been working out a lot more too. I'm trying to get better, stronger physical health. So I'm trying to continue that and kind of like
just in the gym.
The gym and climbing has been fun.
Okay.
I'm one of the melee rock climber guys, so that's what I've been doing. I want to try to also learn and kind of write more because like I kind of got for me, I'm freely able to like speak my mind and think about these things, and I think about things often. But when it comes to writing, I'm bad at transferring my thoughts in a tactful way, and I take a very long time, and then I rush things still somehow, and so I want to get better at writing that, finish up that website and that sort of thing. So those things are what I'm kind of excited for, trying to better myself in that aspect and kind of be a little bit more deliberate, especially in writing. And, whatever that needs to be, I kind of want to try to get into poetry, but I have no idea where to start. So
just start
those
writing.
are my thoughts.
I used to do poetry a little bit. I used to publish under like a pseudonym and stuff, and you just start, and if people like it, they like it. If they don't, who cares? You know what I mean? That's the beauty. That's the beauty of poetry is like, what is it? You know what I mean? But one thing about the writing is like, I've started to do that a little bit too. So it's really cool that you said that. And it's like, it helps me like speak my ideas better too. Like once I write them down and stuff, if it comes up in conversation, I can be like, oh, I've written about this or written.
That sentence has got some big words in it.
Yeah, you can use anti-disestablishmentarianism or what. I can't even say it. So there you go. Maybe I should just keep typing it.
Do it on the website,
Well, with that, I want to say thank you so much to our guest, Free Palestine. This has been a fantastic talk. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm Ethiopium. This has been Items On, and thank you so much for listening.